A dozen essential items vanish from store shelves within just the first 6 hours after the power grid goes down. The real issue isn't whether these things disappear, it's whether you notice it in time to do anything about it. At the beginning, during those first few hours, everything still seems completely normal on the surface. You've got food, you've got water, and it feels like there's still plenty of time to figure things out. But that sense of security is misleading. In reality, changes start happening much faster than you'd expect, almost catching you off guard. They don't come with noise or panic. No chaos, no alarms, just a quiet shift. Items begin to vanish from shelves silently, slipping away before they even cross your mind as something you might need. And by the moment you finally realize you should grab something, it's almost always already gone. It's not that you were too slow, it's that everything around you moved quicker than you could respond. And if you're thinking you're already well prepared, just wait until you get to item number 7. That's usually the point where people suddenly understand they've overlooked something surprisingly basic. Number 12. Fuel. Things like mini gas canisters, butane, or propane. This is what actually keeps your food from turning into something useless. The issue isn't running out of food, it's realizing you have no way to cook it. In those first hours after the power goes out, a lot of people feel reassured when they look at what they've stocked up. Instant noodles, canned goods, enough supplies to get through several days. It all seems fine at first glance. But then comes the moment of truth. The first meal without electricity. That's when a very basic problem hits. The stove won't turn on, the microwave does nothing. And suddenly, most of what you prepared can't be used the way you normally would. This isn't about a shortage. It's about everything you thought was ready becoming temporarily useless. You might have plenty of food stored away, but without a way to heat it or even boil water, much of it becomes inconvenient, and over time, practically unusable. This is where many people slip up. They focus on what they're going to eat, but overlook how they're actually going to prepare it. I remember a comment that really captured this. I have plenty of food but no way to heat it. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but that's exactly the reality many only face after those first critical hours. Once you're stuck eating cold food again and again, unable to boil water or make anything warm, you begin to understand the gap between just having food and being able to prepare a proper meal. Fuel doesn't seem important at first, but its real value lies in how it unlocks everything else you've already prepared. A small gas canister can let you boil water, cook meals, even create a bit of warmth. Basic things that suddenly become essential the moment electricity disappears. It's not the most obvious item on the list, but it's what keeps your entire setup working. You don't need a huge amount, but you do need it ready. And you need to know how to use it before the moment comes. Something as simple as a portable gas stove, along with a few backup canisters, can make a massive difference compared to relying entirely on power from the grid. If you can, test everything ahead of time so you know it works exactly the way you expect. Because when things go wrong, that's not the time to figure out how something works. You want it to be second nature. You might feel confident having enough food for days, but the real question is, can you actually use it? And that's where you start to realize why the next item, something that might not seem obvious at first, turns out to be more important than you'd expect. Number 11. The radio. It's the one thing that keeps you connected when everything else suddenly goes quiet. There's a simple reality most people overlook. When the power goes out, the internet vanishes, and phone signals gradually start to weaken. The first thing you truly lose isn't light, it's access to information. And once that information is gone, it's not just an inconvenience, you lose your sense of direction. That's exactly why radios are among the first items to disappear from stores. Not because everyone immediately thinks of them, but because those who've lived through emergencies understand how unsettling it is to have no idea what's going on. At first, your phone might still seem reliable. Networks often keep running for a while thanks to backup systems. But that doesn't last long. One by one, cell towers begin to shut down. The internet slows to a crawl. Calls start dropping over and over, and eventually, everything goes silent. When that happens, anyone relying only on a smartphone is suddenly cut off in a complete information blackout. They don't know which areas might be unsafe, whether warnings have been issued, or even if they should stay where they are or leave. And when people don't have clear information, they start guessing. In a crisis, guessing often leads to the worst possible choices. That's where a simple radio becomes incredibly valuable. It doesn't need Wi-Fi, strong reception, or anything complicated, just batteries or even a hand crank. And you can still receive news, emergency alerts, and critical updates. People who have radios aren't necessarily more prepared in every way, but they do have a major edge. They know what's happening, and that knowledge helps them stay calmer, think more clearly, and avoid getting caught up in panic. Radios don't vanish because they're rare. They disappear because people realize how important they are too late. When phones stop working, when the internet is gone, and when everything around you falls into silence, that's when people start searching for anything that can reconnect them to the outside world. But by then, just like with water or batteries, the shelves are already cleared out. The good news is the solution isn't complicated. You don't need anything advanced or expensive. A small, simple radio, whether it runs on batteries or a hand crank, kept somewhere easy to reach is more than enough. Number 10. Heavy-duty trash bags, the kind of item that slips off the shelves quietly, long before most people even notice it's gone. Sometimes the things people ignore the most are exactly what end up helping you at the right moment. In the early hours after a power outage, the majority of shoppers rush straight toward food, water, and batteries. Those sections become crowded and chaotic almost immediately. Meanwhile, in a quieter aisle where hardly anyone is paying attention, rolls of heavy-duty trash bags start disappearing without much noise. The key detail is that stores usually don't keep large quantities of these in stock. And the people who understand their value don't just grab one. They take entire rolls, sometimes multiple packs at once. It only takes a handful of early arrivals thinking this way for the shelf to be completely cleared out before most shoppers even realize those items were there. Many people focus only on what sounds essential, things like food and water, while overlooking items that can serve multiple purposes. But a heavy-duty trash bag is far more useful than it seems at first glance. It can double as a rain cover if you need to move through bad weather, act as insulation when you're sitting or lying on cold ground, or even serve as a basic wind barrier when setting up temporary shelter. Beyond that, it can be used to collect rainwater, keep your belongings dry, or handle sanitation if water systems stop working. One simple item, yet it solves multiple problems, all of which become critical when normal systems begin to fail. That's why people with experience head straight to this section before the crowd even understands what's happening. So why do heavy-duty trash bags vanish so quickly? It's not because they're rare, it's because supply is already limited, and those who know how useful they are tend to take more than usual. By the time everyone else realizes they need something to stay dry, keep warm, or protect their gear, the shelves have already been emptied. The solution, though, is straightforward. Don't wait until you need it to think about it. Keep a few rolls of heavy-duty trash bags at home ahead of time. They're inexpensive, easy to store, and rarely go to waste. You might not reach for them every day, but when you do, you'll quickly see they're far more valuable than they appear. So if you suddenly had to leave your home in cold rain, or needed a quick way to protect your belongings in an emergency, would you have something simple yet durable enough to rely on? Or would you only realize its importance when it's already gone? And that's when it becomes clear why the next item, something most people assume they already have plenty of, tends to disappear even faster than expected. Number 9. Water filters and purification tools. The kind of item that ultimately decides whether you'll still have usable water after a few days. Most people get this wrong. Around 90% assume that simply stocking up on bottled water is enough. And in those first moments after the power goes out, that's exactly what happens. The crowd heads straight for bottled water, grabbing as much as they can carry. Meanwhile, the section with water filters stays relatively untouched, almost invisible, because it doesn't feel urgent right away. But there's always a small group of people who think differently. Instead of piling up more bottled water, they focus on something else: how to avoid relying on it entirely. And it only takes a few of them acting early for water filters, which are usually limited in supply, to start disappearing from the shelves. By the time most people realize their stored water won't last forever, they come back looking for alternatives, only to find there's nothing left. The true importance of a water filter doesn't really sink in until the outage has been going on for a while. At that point, tap water might become unreliable, inconsistent, or no longer safe to drink. You may still have access to water, but not necessarily water you can trust. That's when the difference becomes obvious. People who have a way to treat their water stay more composed, while those who don't begin to feel the pressure. The idea behind it is simple, but incredibly important. It turns an ordinary water source into something much safer to use. Whether it's leftover tap water, collected rainwater, or another available source, a filter gives you options most people don't consider during those first few hours. And despite what some might think, using one isn't complicated. Most personal filters work by simply passing water through the device, or even letting you drink directly through it. No electricity, no complicated setup. But the key is having it ready beforehand. Because once you start thinking about water treatment, it's usually already too late. The shelves are empty. That's why these items disappear so quickly. Not because everyone rushes to grab them at first, but because a small number of people who understand their value take them early, while everyone else catches on too late. Number 8. Lighters and matches. The kind of basic items that disappear the moment people realize they can't easily make fire anymore. There's a strange pattern. The more ordinary something seems, the faster it gets wiped out. In the early hours of a power outage, most people assume they already have a lighter somewhere at home, or that they won't need one right away. That assumption keeps the lighter and match section calm at first, with no rush or attention. But that calm doesn't last. Someone once described a situation during a long outage where, on the first day, they weren't even thinking about food or water. Everything still felt manageable. But when night fell and they tried to heat food or boil water, reality hit them. They had no way to create fire at all. The next morning, they went back to the store, expecting to fix the problem easily. Instead, what they found wasn't chaos. It was emptiness. No lighters, no matches, just bare shelves where they had been the day before. Many people believe they can always improvise fire if needed, using stones, friction methods, or survival tricks. But in practice, those methods take skill, time, and the right conditions. And in a stressful situation, especially for the first time, that's not something you want to rely on when you just need a flame immediately. Lighters and matches aren't only about starting a stove. They're what make basic survival routines possible: cooking food, boiling water, and generating warmth. When electricity is gone, those small actions become the foundation of daily life. Because they feel so familiar and easy to replace, people tend to underestimate them. They assume they can always pick them up later. But in reality, the opposite happens. The simplest items are often the first to disappear, precisely because everyone thinks they're easy to get. And when people finally realize they actually need them, they return too late. The shelves are already empty. Number 7. Batteries. Backup power. The small but essential source that keeps your devices from turning into useless objects. The real weakness isn't scarcity itself, but the way everyone thinks the same way. When electricity is working normally, batteries barely cross your mind. But the moment the power goes out, you suddenly notice how many things around you are still physically present, but completely non-functional. Flashlights, radios, clocks, remote controls. So many everyday devices depend on a tiny energy source most people tend to ignore. What's ironic is that batteries are actually one of the cheapest items on this entire list. A pack of AA or AAA batteries often costs only a few dollars, and even power banks are relatively affordable. But because they're inexpensive and easy to buy, people tend to treat them as something they can deal with later rather than preparing ahead of time. As a result, many either forget to buy batteries at all, or they store them without ever checking them, only to discover when they actually need them that they're already drained or no longer reliable. It might seem like a small detail, but this is exactly where problems start to build up. A flashlight with just 2 batteries won't carry you through several days without electricity. A radio without working backup batteries is nothing more than a useless object sitting on a shelf. The issue isn't owning the device, it's whether you can actually keep it running. No special skill is required, no setup time needed. Just insert the batteries and it works. In situations where everything else becomes complicated, that kind of simplicity becomes a major advantage. It helps maintain light, access to information, and a basic sense of control. Instead of just buying batteries randomly, it makes more sense to match them to the devices you already own. Each important device should have at least one dedicated backup set ready to go. Even better, combining rechargeable batteries with alternative charging options like a power bank or a small solar panel adds another layer of reliability. And just as important, everything should be checked periodically, since batteries left unused for too long can fail without warning. A few dollars worth of batteries might not seem significant, but in the right moment, they can decide whether you have light or none at all. Number 6. Flashlights and headlamps. The tools that decide what you're actually able to see when everything around you goes completely dark. The real problem in a power outage isn't just losing electricity. It's the moment you fully realize you can't see anything at all. Once the light is gone, even familiar spaces in your own home start to feel unfamiliar and slightly disorienting. Dark corners, hidden obstacles, even simple actions like walking around or finding basic items become much more difficult than people expect. A common mistake is assuming that having one flashlight is enough. People think they're covered just because they own one light source, but they don't consider what happens when they need it for long periods of time. They also don't think about situations where they need both hands free while still needing light. Holding a flashlight in one hand and trying to work with the other sounds manageable in theory, but in practice it quickly becomes frustrating, whether you're cleaning, cooking, or searching for something in the dark. That's exactly where a headlamp becomes a much more practical solution. Not because it produces stronger light, but because it frees your hands completely. Wherever you look, the light follows your movement naturally. It may seem like a small difference, but in a blackout, it changes everything. It separates simply reacting from being able to function normally. I once came across a comment that really stuck with me. I thought I was prepared until I had to hold a flashlight in my mouth just to fix something. It sounds almost humorous at first, but situations like that are very real when you're unprepared. These are the kinds of problems people don't think about until they're already facing them. The real value of flashlights and headlamps isn't just illumination. It's the ability to keep doing everyday tasks even when conditions are far from normal. With proper lighting, you can still move safely, handle basic chores, and maintain some level of routine instead of everything coming to a standstill. The preparation advice here is straightforward. Don't rely on a single light source. At a minimum, it's wise to have both a flashlight and a headlamp, each supported by its own power supply. If possible, choosing energy-efficient models or ones with multiple brightness settings can help extend usage time significantly. Number 5. Wet wipes and sanitizer, the kind of items that make you suddenly realize you can't stay as clean as you normally do. What actually becomes uncomfortable isn't just the lack of food or supplies. It's the moment you start feeling like you can't properly clean your own body anymore. In the early hours of a power outage, almost nobody thinks about hygiene products like wipes or sanitizer. Most attention goes to things like water, food, and batteries. But it doesn't take long before a different problem starts to show up. Your hands feel greasy after eating. Dust and grime build up on your skin after simple tasks like cleaning or moving things around. And slowly, you lose the ability to clean yourself in the way you're used to. One comment really stood out. I didn't think I needed it until I had no way to wash my hands. It sounds extremely simple, but that's exactly the moment many people start to understand the issue. It's not that water disappears completely, it's that you can't use it normally or as freely as before. And when that happens, the discomfort doesn't hit all at once. It builds slowly, until you feel more drained and uneasy than you expected. The biggest mistake is treating hygiene as something that can wait. In reality, it's the opposite. When you're eating, handling dirty objects, or touching surfaces that are no longer clean, not being able to wash your hands or freshen up starts to create real consequences. It's not just about feeling uncomfortable. It can also increase the risk of infection and make your body feel weaker in an already unstable situation. The real value of wet wipes and sanitizer isn't convenience, it's stability. A simple wipe before eating, a quick clean after chores, or even refreshing your face and hands. These small habits can completely change how you feel and function. It's better to choose unscented wet wipes that are easy to carry and enough to last a few days. And instead of relying on one large pack stored in a single place, it's far more practical to split them into several smaller packs and keep them in different locations. If possible, pairing them with sanitizer gives you an extra layer of quick and efficient cleaning when water isn't readily available. You can go without food for a while, but the feeling of not being clean wears you down faster than most people expect. So ask yourself, if you couldn't wash your hands normally, what would you do instead? And that's exactly where it becomes clear why the next item plays a much bigger role than most people realize. Number 4. Bottled water. The item everyone thinks about first but often misunderstands the most. The real issue isn't whether you store water or not, it's what kind of thinking you apply to it. When a power outage happens, bottled water is usually the very first thing people reach for. It feels obvious, simple, and instantly reassuring. Seeing stacks of water bottles at home creates the illusion that everything is under control. But that sense of security is exactly what leads many people to prepare the wrong way. Someone once shared their experience of buying a large amount of water on the first day and feeling completely safe. But soon after, they realized they were using it out of habit rather than awareness, drinking, washing, and cleaning without any real limits. And that's when the problem starts to show. The consumption rate is much higher than expected. Water doesn't vanish instantly, but it quietly runs out in ways people don't notice. The real issue isn't the absence of water. It's not understanding how quickly you're using it or how to properly manage it. Many people store enough for several days, but continue using it as if supply is unlimited. In reality, once the water system becomes unstable, every single bottle becomes far more valuable than usual. The strength of bottled water lies in its convenience and immediate safety. You don't need to purify it or think about it. You simply open it and use it. That's a major advantage in the first chaotic hours of an outage. But its limitation is just as clear. It's finite. Unlike reusable resources, bottled water only decreases, and once it's gone, you can't replace it without another solution. That's why the key isn't just storing water, it's managing it properly. A simple but important approach is to divide it by person and by day, and control usage from the very beginning instead of reacting later. It's also smart to always set aside a portion strictly for drinking, without using it for anything else. And if possible, pairing bottled water with an alternative source reduces total dependence on it. You might feel like you have enough water, but the real question is, are you actually using it wisely? And that's exactly where it becomes clear why the next item, the one that doesn't give you an immediate sense of safety, turns out to be more important than most people expect. Number 3. Easy to prepare food. Instant noodles, canned meals, and simple snacks. It's the category everyone feels they've covered, but quickly starts to realize isn't as sufficient as they thought. Ask yourself this: if you had to eat the same type of food for 3 days in a row, would you still feel completely fine with it? When a power outage happens, instant noodles, canned goods, and snack foods are usually among the first choices people grab. They're quick, require almost no preparation, and give the impression that you're fully prepared for the next few days. But that very convenience hides a problem that doesn't show up immediately. There's a fairly common situation people describe. During a longer blackout, a family stocked up heavily on instant noodles and canned food. The first day feels normal enough. Everyone eats without issue. By the second day, boredom starts to set in. Not because there's a lack of food, but because everything tastes and feels the same. By the third day, appetite drops significantly. Even though food is still available, people no longer really want to eat it. It's not that the body stops needing energy, it's that the desire to eat begins to fade. What often surprises people isn't the crisis itself, but the way they prepared for it. They focus only on having enough, while forgetting that both the body and mind don't function well on repetition alone. When your diet is limited to dry, salty, or repetitive foods, you don't just lose enjoyment. You also start feeling more tired and drained in ways that aren't immediately obvious. The strength of these foods is their simplicity and readiness. You don't need tools, and there's almost no preparation required. But that same strength also creates a weakness. They're not ideal as a long-term solution without variety and balance. The practical approach is simple. Don't just stock more food, stock different kinds of food. Mix savory items with sweet ones, combine ready-to-eat meals with simple snacks, and add options like crackers, canned fruit, or other foods that break the monotony. If possible, even try eating in that way during a normal day. You'll quickly understand how long you can realistically tolerate it. Number 2. Electrolyte drinks, like Gatorade or Pedialyte. The kind of thing your body actually needs before you even realize something is missing. Most people assume that drinking water alone is enough. But then they start noticing something strange. The more they drink, the more tired they feel. When a power outage begins, The natural reaction for most people is simple. They drink more water than usual and assume that will solve everything. And while that isn't wrong, it's not the full picture. Because your body isn't just losing water, it's also losing the minerals that help it hold on to that water in the first place. The problem doesn't show up instantly. It builds slowly over time. At first, you feel a bit heavier, slightly lightheaded, and less focused than usual. You drink more water, expecting to feel better, but nothing really improves. In some cases, it even feels like your energy is dropping faster the more you drink. That isn't just simple dehydration. It's your body slipping out of balance. Someone once described going through exactly this during a summer blackout. They kept drinking water throughout the day, but instead of improving, they felt increasingly weak. It wasn't until they had an electrolyte drink that things started to shift. Not because it was some kind of instant fix, but because their body finally received what it had been missing. Electrolyte drinks don't work like food, and they don't instantly remove thirst in the usual way. But they help your body actually retain the fluids you take in. They bring your system back into balance more quickly, instead of letting you slowly deteriorate without understanding why. Many people overlook them because they assume they're only meant for athletes or extreme conditions. But in hot weather, during physical activity, or in situations where your body is losing fluids faster than normal, they become far more important than people think. You don't need a large supply, but you do need some on hand. Even a few bottles at the beginning can make a noticeable difference, especially when you start feeling off without knowing the cause. Number 1. A first aid kit and basic medications, the kind of items that stop small issues from turning into much bigger problems. When lighting is poor, movement is limited, and stress levels are high, you become far more likely to run into situations that would normally be easy to handle. The real question isn't whether something will go wrong, it's whether you'll already have the tools to deal with it when it does. A small cut, a headache, a minor scratch, these are usually insignificant in everyday life. But when medical help isn't immediately accessible, they can start affecting how you function, rest, and go about your day. What many people don't realize is that small issues don't simply go away on their own, they tend to build up over time. If you don't address them early, they linger. If you ignore them, they gradually make you more uncomfortable, distracted, and tired. Not because they are dangerous on their own, but because you're forced to deal with them under less than ideal conditions. The real purpose of a first aid kit isn't to treat serious illness. It's to prevent minor problems from escalating. A simple bandage lets you continue working without interruption. Basic pain relief helps you stay functional. Antiseptic reduces the risk of infection and removes unnecessary worry. Individually, these are small things, but together, they help maintain stability when you need it most. Many people focus on large, obvious supplies, but overlook these basics, assuming they won't be necessary. Yet when you're tired, sleep-deprived, and handling multiple challenges at once, having simple, familiar tools ready can save a lot of energy and stress. You don't need a large collection, just the right essentials. Keep them simple, easy to use, and things you clearly know how to apply without hesitation. And just as importantly, store them somewhere you can reach immediately, not a place you'll have to search through when you actually need them. Ask yourself, can you handle a small issue right away without it disrupting everything else? And that's where it becomes clear why the final item, the one most people tend to completely overlook, turns out to be more important than expected. You don't even need to experience a full power outage to understand this. All it takes is looking honestly at how you're currently prepared.